So as you said, I am the managing director for the Emerald Coast MLS, and some of you may not realize or recognize that we split that into two corporations. So the association is a not-for-profit, not-for-profit, and the MLS has been split off into a for-profit corporation. And the reason for that is mostly taxes, but also for liability reasons. In the coming year, the association is also spinning off a nonprofit so that they can better. I'm glad. I was worried we were all in the wrong place. But they're spinning off a nonprofit so that they can continue to support the charities and the other things that the association does. But I run the for-profit right now. So, and I'm always happy to come out and talk to you guys. And like I said, I'm trying to be someplace where all of you can see me. I don't use slides. I work live from the products that we have. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that I like. I was asked about statistics. There's a ton of statistic reports and a ton of ways to run the statistic reports, but I'm going to show you some of what I think are the best ones and one of our third-party products that is, frankly, pretty fantastic. So, and then at any point, feel free to shout out a question or, you know, hey, I don't understand that, or how'd you get there, or what the heck are you looking at, or what are you talking about, you crazy man. So, unless there's a question to start out with, I'm going to get started. All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm obviously in my Flex account, and I'm in my admin account, so I don't want anybody to panic when you see that, but I have more menu options than you guys do. That said, I'm going to use the same menu options that you have today, and I'm going to show you how some of them work. I have classes on all of the headers in the MLS, so the bold titles that you can't click on, and we teach the same two classes every month. They're the second and third Wednesday of every month. That's the add change class and the search class. But the more popular classes that I offer for advanced classes are the statistics class, which we're going to cover most of today, and the CMA class, which is obviously an option under CMA, but has its own class because it's more complicated than can be covered in, you know, that one class. The options under statistics are pretty self-explanatory until you get to a certain point. So I'm going to do my best, but if you don't see something that you really wanted to know about, shout out, raise a hand, do something, throw something, I'm fine with it. The first one under statistics is the My Production option. This isn't going to show very much for me, but it is designed to show you as an agent where you stand, both in relation to yourself and overall in relation to the MLS, if that makes sense. Obviously, I don't sell property, and so as a result, mine doesn't have a lot of information. But it is very easy to use this report. You literally just open it up, and it's going to run based on who you are and everything else. You have a few parameters that you can choose. For example, you can run it back or comparison to previous dates. There is a quick view option, which we are under, and a member year-to-date report, which just changes the look a little bit. And so, like I said, this is where you are in relation to your office. This is where you are in relation to the MLS as a whole. Make sense?
Okay. Chris, I got a question.
Please.
On that. So if you're on splitting a listing, co-listing, how do those numbers go?
Okay. So for every sale, there's two sides to a transaction. There's the listing side and there's the buyer's side, right? And if you had both sides of the transaction, you'd actually get two for that sale. Make sense?
Yep.
When you co-list, you get a fraction of that. So you get a half. So you get a half of the list or you get a half of the sale because you were a part of it, not the whole.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that can get you on that one and a couple of other reports down that we'll see in a little bit. You'll see it says number of sales 3.5, and that's what that means. That's what happens there. Yeah, no, it's a great question. All right, and then, you know, everything else is kind of self-explanatory: volume, average list price, median list price, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these reports, and this one is very information dense, will often provide the data either in an exportable option. In this case, you can export your own data or the data that's used in the report, or you can just copy it out of the report. But I'll try to point that out when I see it. If there's anybody that just doesn't like the formatting for these reports, shout out, and I'll make sure I show you where it is for that report. The next one is the market summary report. Now this was my long-standing favorite because it's one of the few reports in the system that will display graphs, and it will show you, or it can show you, or your client, what's going on in an area with very little input, if that makes sense. And the system will tell you what you were looking at up here in the top left. All right, so right now it says February 2025 and it is residential. And so when I look at any of these charts, and there's everything from number of listings and list price to the absorption rate, sold to list, days on market, price and volume, and then down at the bottom we've got the data that makes up the charts at the top. But let's go back and look at the charts real quick. So the very last option on the chart is going to be the date that I gave the system. And so the system remembers the last time I ran this report. I ran it to February of 2025, and it is showing me that report again. In order to customize this report, I can click on Customize up here in the top right. Previous location and favorite locations are things that you set up by using the search function. I'm just going to choose New Location for right now. The location system in Flex is pretty robust. I could choose a city, so if I wanted to do, I could do Santa Rosa. And we can see that it gave me an option for Santa Rosa Beach as a city. If I go down here and show all, there's also going to be Santa Rosa County, right? On here somewhere, but Santa Rosa is pretty popular. I probably shouldn't have picked that one. There's Santa Rosa County, right? So I could run it by a city, I could run it by a county. The system is also smart enough because we're inside of Flex. I can run it by an area, yeah. And I can even run it by areas and sub-areas. Now I can only run it by one at a time. So if, for example, if I run it for 18, I'm going to double click here to choose it, and I try to add 17, there it is. It says you can't do that. All right, so that's one of the primary limitations of this report is I can only run it for one area at a time. If I want to run a compare and contrast, I kind of have to run it twice, and then I have to pull the data and do it in something else or look at it, if that makes sense. I'll run it for 18 because I think that's where we are right now. I didn't look at the map on the way in. The system will give me a report date. It can run it up to the last complete month. So I can't run it for December because we're still in December, but I could run it for November. Make sense? So I'll run it for November, and then I can run it for any property type that we have. So if you're interested in residential, that's primarily what people do, we can do that. If you want to do land or commercial for sale or rentals, you can do that too. But we'll use residential because it's like I said, the primary. And then we hit search. And sometimes it takes a second. Oh, good, that went faster. And you can see it's telling me up here at the top what we're looking at. And so it says market summary for November 2025, which is again always going to be the last date in the charts that we look at. And then it's running for a specific area. So it's running it for area 18. Make sense? And so it shows me things like I said, I've got number of listings, and the blue is the actives and the red is the solds. If I want to, I can modify some of these a little bit. So for example, I can click on the little, it's kind of a wrench over a piece of paper, but if I click on that, I can add options for new listings. I can add option for pending listings. But if I add too many, you can see that the pendings and the solds overlap. Or excuse me, pendings and the solds overlap pretty badly down here at the bottom. It's almost impossible to see both of them. So typically I'll leave two in there, and actives and solds is what people care about most of the time. So I try not to clutter it, but you can add it, and if you've got somebody who's interested in something particular, you can modify it a little bit. But I do like this report because it gives me different slices of the same data that I can look at pretty quickly. Make sense? Now, obviously from this, we care about the number of listings, we care about the list price. Full disclosure, I used to be a property appraiser, so this statistic right here means a lot to me. This is the absorption rate in months. Does anybody know what the absorption rate is? Yeah, a couple of you sat in my classes before or paid attention in that section. For those of you who don't know, the absorption rate is if we didn't add any more listings today, and the market continued exactly, or any more listings after today, and the market continued exactly as it has been, how long would it take the market to sell out all of the listings that we have right now? Make sense? And so that's a really good indicator. It's what appraisers will typically look at to say, are we in a good market? Or are we in a bad market? I will tell you, and this is not me, but this is what the state of Florida's chief economist and a statistician told us. Anything under 9 months is considered a hot market. So do with that information as you will. If you're interested in this, obviously you can see it over here on the left, but if you hover over one of the dots, the system will tell you what it is. And so we want the absorption rate to be lower, obviously, and that can happen either because sales are up or because inventory is down. So you got to be careful on those two fronts. But in this case, in this area, the absorption rate for last month was 10.69 months, which is not great, but you can also see the trend is very clearly down, right? So that's good. We've got sold to list ratios, we've got days on market, we've got price and volume, and then again, like I said, we've got all the data that supports those statistics, those charts at the top. This one does, well, it does actually have the export feature. Like I said, I was telling them earlier, typically I don't record these classes because the system changes so fast to keep up with new trends and new options that by the time I get around to watching the video, something's changed and it's not the same. So if you're watching this at home, sorry. The next report, unless anybody's got a question about that one, is the market trends and graphs report. So the market summary report was my favorite for displaying for a client. So you have somebody that want to know about an area, you can just print that report and give it to them. This one, the market trends report, is my favorite for figuring out really what's going on in an area. So if you're not familiar with a subdivision or you're not familiar with a side of the county or a particular city, the system can pull information based on your requests, and we'll show you how to do that here in a second as soon as it loads. But you can, again, take slices of the same data and look at it different ways and figure out what's going on in some cases. So for example, just like the last time, the system remembers what I ran the last time I ran this report. So make sure you update it every time you come in here. I'm going to go ahead and change this one. So the filters is the option that lets us select new locations and what we're doing. But I'm going to change that mostly because otherwise as we jump around, it's going to take forever to load every time. So it wants to filter first by quick search. And the quick search option is going to give me more choices. Well, obviously, it's going to give me the choice of the property type. And so I can choose filter. I can also filter by saved searches. So if I wanted to create a search for a specific client or look at a specific thing for a client, I could do that. By choosing the quick search template, I'm actually giving myself access to everything that's under the template. And it can be one that was given to you or one that you create on your own, but you can create a search on the fly. So if you're doing this for a client, you probably have a saved search associated with them. You can just go saved search and pick them from the list. If you're doing this on the fly with somebody sitting there watching you, you would choose the quick search template and then you would basically choose the options that you're interested in. Now, if you reduce the options, for example, status is not currently selected. And so that means that everything is chosen. Make sense? And so if I choose to reduce those, say I'm only looking at active properties, some of the reports that we're going to see here in a second may not be as effective as if we had included everything. So I'm going to include all the statuses just so you can see what our options are. I could limit it to a particular price range. So if I'm in an area and they only want to talk about, I don't know, Gulf fronts or something like that. One way that we can get into that market range is by saying, okay, I want all the high-end properties. Or if their budget is this, we can use the system to set their budget and see what's available. Again, I can do it by area and then I can do it by sub-area after I've selected that. Let's take a look. Well, let's leave it at the association. So without selecting anything, it's going to run it for everything. Make sense? We've got subtypes. So if we're interested in attached single units, townhouses, or condos, or detached single family, I can narrow it to that. I can narrow it by bedrooms or baths, square footage and design, year built, status change, city, zip, I think county's in here somewhere, street name, street number, project/subdivision, which can get problematic. We can talk about that later if you're interested. There is an option for waterfront, which was added. You can also add an option for water view, but you'd have to create your own quick search template to do it. I'm just going to leave it blank, and so we're going to see basically everything. And I knew it was going to take forever to load. I should have restricted it a little bit more. The benefit of this one is that if you want to compare different areas, you can. The only problem is that it's throwing them all into one bucket. So this is not really a great one for comparison unless you're really good at parsing out the statistics. Make sense? So you can see that my previous search was by area, and I had areas of Fort Walton, Niceville, Destin, and Crestview. If I was looking at that as major market or metro areas, those are basically what we've got. But if I was looking for overall what the market is doing, that would be a terrible search for searching, if that makes sense. Y'all's Wi-Fi not good? Or should I back out and try again? We can do that. There we go. Okay. If something goes wrong, like in this case, an error occurred, it probably just timed out. It will tell you, you get a big angry red box. If you get a slightly less angry yellow box, that means it's just a warning. Let's see if I can do a little bit better. I'm going to do residential again, but we're going to filter it again and tailor it to just, let's say, area 18. That should allow us to get significantly less information, and hopefully it loads up a little bit faster. Otherwise, we may have to skip this one. We'll see what it does. So like I said, the market summary option I see as something that you can print out and provide to your clients. Oh, good, it finished. But this market trends option is one that I think is more beneficial to the agent. So I filtered by area 18. I've got an option for number of listings. I can click on that over here on the left. Down at the bottom is where I set the date range. So right now we're running up through from 2020 through 2024. I'm gonna narrow that a little bit, mostly to hopefully speed this process up. We're gonna do 24 and 25. Again, the system will balk at you if you try to run it up through December, for example, because it's not a full month. It might let you, sometimes it will, sometimes it says this and gives you a warning. It says, hey, you can't do that for anything later than November. So we'll run it for one full year and see what happens. Come on, go faster. Don't make me a liar. If you run it with a lot of the flex reports, if you run it for more data, it just takes longer to load. We have a better option. I'll show it to you before we're done today, but this one is a pretty good option, and like I said. Okay, so right now it's defaulting me to months of inventory, so this is how much inventory we have. Similar to absorption rate, but if you want to get into the nitty-gritty on that one, just Google the difference between absorption rate and months of inventory. It can show you the number of listings that you have. It can show you the price trends over a specific time frame. It can show you the sale to list price ratio. It can show you the days on markets, days on market. We saw months of inventory, and there's an option for volume. This option has a show hide data table, but it also has the export function. And when you go to export, you can export everything that's displayed or all the data. Because especially in this one, it makes sense. It's got more data than it's being displayed on this specific chart, which is just volume, obviously. It's got these other 5 charts as well. And so it's pulled all the data. You can get all of it, or you can get just the chart that you're looking at. Make sense? Okay. Let's get to the good stuff. Okay, so those are the basic search options. The more complicated ones we'll go through a little bit faster. I'm not going to go through all of them because they are a lot and they can do a lot of things. But depending upon the way that you run them, you can get different results. And so this is the market trends reports. There are a bunch of them. The format and the export or the information that's provided can depend on what you are pulling out of the system. So what it's showing you depends on what you're asking it for. Does that make sense? The reports themselves can change. Now, over here on the right, you can select a report. So for example, if I choose year-over-year comparison on the left, and I go down here and I view sample, it will show me what a report like that looks like, but this is not based on our data. If I had to guess, I think this is Austin, but it will tell you if it's kind of the report you're looking for. That is not the one that I wanted. So if I come back to, let's see if it's year to date, that one is also not the one that I wanted. Where is the let's do sales statistic by area then. Okay, so tons of reports. Check out the defaults, the samples, so you know which one's which. If you're looking for a particular data point, for example, the absorption rate, you can call us. If I know, I'm happy to tell you, but most of the time I'm going to send you to Flex because, like I said, well, you'll see, but when I choose to run the report, the first thing that happens is the system gives me options. And in some cases on these reports, it will give me multiple pages of options. And depending upon which I choose on each page, I get a different report, different stats out the end. So it's one of those situations where it can be, there's 100 or so reports, but they can be run thousands of ways, right? For today, I'm going to choose the date range that it defaults to, which is just the last month. I'm going to include all property types. I'm going to regret that probably here in a minute, but we'll see. I can group based on area, based on city, based on county, state, status, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to do area so we can take a look at it. I can also filter by a quick search. So if I wanted to, I could filter by a particular thing. If I don't, on a lot of these reports, it's going to give me all property types. In this case, it says I'm getting all property types, and I can choose to just look at residential, so we'll do that, otherwise it muddies the water. But sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes that can make it look really confusing. The ranking report does that, and I'll show you how that works out here in a second. But let's take a look at the report. And so what this is we're just looking at residential, and so we can see the number of units that basically sold, what the volume was, the average sale price over a month, the average difference in sale price to list price, and the average days on market by area. And so this is one of those things where you can go, okay, well, this is really interesting. Crestview is up $39,000, where everything else is basically down. So I'm betting that there's probably somebody did a typo in there, but it is possible that the Crestview market is hot. But this is one of those where we can go, okay, North Santa Rosa County is pretty good. We don't have as many listings, but the difference between list price and sale price is only $2,000, as opposed to the difference between in Area 18, where the difference is $111,000, right? There's tons of reports, and they can be run tons of different ways. Where is the one that I want? Let's try the next one. So the market trends report, where's the one that I want? Was that where I was? Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe it's under the inventory and production now. It is, okay, thank goodness. Okay, like I said, there's tons of reports. There's only a few that do certain things. The one, for example, that used to be really confusing was the ranking report. The only way to get it was by running the saturation analysis report and then pulling out the ranking information. They have since decided that was a terrible name, and they have included a separate report called a ranking report. If you want to know how you are doing in relation to everyone else in the association, this is the only report that can do it. I'm going to run it for all property types. That's a bad idea. We'll see why here in a second. But it is the only way that I can demonstrate the difference between the different property types. We'll leave all areas and all everything. I am going to restrict it down here at the bottom. There is an option for how many people we want to see on the report. And it should be on here somewhere, but I'm missing it, so we're hoping it's on the second page now. Oh, good, it is. Okay, I can rank members, I can rank offices, I can rank companies, I can rank companies and offices, I can rank members in an office. The difference between an office and a company is obviously you are the member. Makes sense, right? The local office where you work, this building is an office. The Berkshire Hathaway franchise would be considered a company. Make sense? Okay, so that's the way that those are separated out. I'm just going to choose members, but if you wanted to rank everybody in office, you want to know how good you're doing in comparison to somebody else, you can absolutely do that with this report. And here we go. And now we talk about, all right, so we're going to rank them, but what are we going to rank them on? I can rank them on number, which would be the number of sides. We're going to do that first because that's where we talk about the half a side, right? Or I could rank based on dollar volume. I can include, or I can rank them based on a particular status. So I can say who has the most active listings, but realistically, we care mostly about who has the most sales. So we're going to leave it on sales for right now. I can see who the best listing agent is. I can see who the best buyer's agent is. I can see who has the most of both sides of the transaction by saying and, or I can say who's the best listing or selling, if that makes sense. And then I can include some additional information down here at the bottom. So for example, I could include last year's calculations. So if they're great this year, where were they last year? I can include MLS totals, which would say, you know, of the MLS in total, they've done this much volume or this many sales. How much is that in relation to every sale that's taken place in a particular area or in the entire MLS, which is what we're searching for. And then I can exclude non-member accounts from the ranking list. I'm going to leave them in so you can see what that means. I can reduce this. Well, the default is 10. I'm going to leave it at 10. You can run it up to, I think, 500, but it takes a lot longer when you do that. So just know it may time out or it may look like it froze up. Okay, so fantastic. What did I run the area for? It doesn't matter. Okay, so this is fun. Rarely do I ever see this. Most of the time we see the non-member ID up pretty high in the system. That's members who are sold a property that are not a member of the association. Make sense? In this case, I don't see it. It's E999 and there's another one for Navarre, but this tells me how many, and we're basing it on sides, right? So this person had 31 sides, 10 billion.
Is that just for a month? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
in a month.
31 in a month.
31 in a month.
That's just listing sides, right? That's not.
Yeah, I'm just looking at listing members. So remember that the reports will often tell you what you're looking at the top. So this is just listing members, not selling, not both sides. This is, oh, and that's why we didn't get the outside ID, because most of the time the outside ID is for the buyer's side, right? We are looking at closed. We are looking at all property types. So we have 31 sides for this agent. We have 15 sides for the next closest agent. We have 12 sides for this team. Teams start with a T, so we can look at the ID and tell it's a team. Navarre members start with an N, so if the ID starts with an N, we can tell they're Navarre. And then it gets a little bit weird. So the volume is pretty high in the first 4, but then the volume and the average price drops to $2,000. That's not right, right? That's rentals. The system's not smart enough. We told it we wanted all property types. And so the system thinks, well, a closed is a closed. It's rented, it's sold, it doesn't matter, it's closed. And so these people had 9 rentals in the last month, and as a result, they're included in the top 10, but they're not necessarily apples to apples. Make sense? So this is definitely a great report, but you have to really be careful about it and figure out what's going on. And you can see the last person, last team down here has 8.5 sides. This is an example of a team was a co-list on a property and has a half a side, right? Are there any specific reports? There's one more I think I was looking for and didn't find. Oh, yeah, this one. The yearly market comparison report. There are agent reports. There are brokerage reports that are available. So there's a broker inventory and a managerial statistics. So if you're an office manager, there's some good reports you can run for that. The yearly market comparison report is the one that I typically produce for the association leadership, so for the board. I'm going to restrict it. I'm going to say just residential, for example. I'm going to, and normally I would do this by area. So I would say, or by county, I would say, okay, here's how Okaloosa is doing, here's how Walton is doing, here's how Santa Rosa is doing. And then we would have different reports and you could look at them basically across the format. But let me show you the report in total and then we can talk about what it means. I'm going to go down to, so we want member statistics and you can choose, excuse me, I want MLS statistics. If I choose member, it's just me, right? If I choose office, it's just my office. If I choose company, it's my franchise. But if I want everything, I have to choose MLS. And this one does not default to that. And I can compare particular years. So I can compare 21 to 24 if I wanted to. I'm going to do last year to this year because it does something different when you use an incomplete year. Although we're close enough, it's probably not going to look terrible. But this is the market comparison report. It's going to take a little bit, and I'm going to get a drink of water. Oh, good, it did do what I expected it to do. Okay, so it shows me by month. It breaks it into several categories. So here I've got different sections. This is one of the most information dense reports, and like I said, I give this to I used to give this to the board of directors. I never gave them just the full report. I would pull out the information that they were interested in and I would compile it into my own report in Excel. The only way to do that with this system is to literally select it, copy and paste it, but it does work very, very well. But so for example, we can see the number of sold listings and the differences by month. So in January of 2024, we had 641 solds in 2024 and only 628 in 2025. It shows a negative as red, and so there were 13 less. That's a 2% drop, right? And we can do that month by month, and then at the end, in this case, December is not complete. So we have 850 sales in 2024. We're only at 226. I would expect it to be down, but the month is not complete. And so one of the things I would take out for the board was if we were doing this in June or July, I would take out everything after that, right, in the 2025 column, because it's just inaccurate. It's just misleading because we haven't finished December, and as a result, it's not done. I would normally say that we're also not done with November, and this is just anecdotal evidence, but I've found that it takes about 2 weeks for all the listings sales to be input from November into the system. So unless you're pretty close to the end of the month, the last month may not have everything as well. But the only way to check that is literally to check it day by day. But like I said, most of the time around 2 weeks, I would include that information for the previous month. Other than that, I would give them a warning. We've got dollar volume. So what was the dollar volume in January 2024 versus 25? Median sale price versus 2024, 2020 versus 2025. And it's got it broken out by month. I have a math degree and I'm a nerd, so sorry. This is very cool to me, but I know it's just a bunch of numbers on the screen. You can see it broken out by month. There is a year-to-date information and there is a total information. So if I was comparing previous years, so if I wanted to do 2020 to 2021 to show what happened during COVID versus what happened right after COVID, or maybe I want to do 2020 versus 2024, COVID versus a normal year, I could look at the year-to-date, but I could also look at the totals to determine what actually happened. Yes, sir?
Can you do 3 years or 4 years at a time?
No. You can, and then that's something that I would do for the board sometimes when they asked for it, but I would have to pull the report and then I would copy and paste into the different sections. Yeah. It does have the number of new listings, so how fast are we adding properties, dollar volume of new listings, and median list price as well. All right. This is one of my favorite reports for what are we doing now versus, how's the year shaping up. There are a ton of other good reports I'm not going to get into today, but I did want to show you, I think we're going to skip that one. There was one other report that's beneficial. There's a report on the inventory and production called the Sales and Inventory Report. It's the very last one on there. It was from our previous MLS system. So when I started long ago in the before time, we were on solid earth, and we had a specific report called the Sales and Inventory Report, and the agents liked it so much that I found a copy of it and we recreated it in Flex. And so if you like that kind of thing, this is a really good report. It's a custom to our association report. It's similar to what we saw just a second ago. The biggest difference is it's giving you a little bit more information about that particular month. And so, for example, it's giving me, the month, the year, the monthly sales, the monthly volume, average price, median price, but then it's also got days on market, sold to list price, current inventory, and months of inventory as well.
What was that under?
This is the sales and inventory report. It's under the stats header, under the inventory and production. It's the very last report.
And are you able to define an area in that report?
Yes, I'm actually looking at the, I was not looking at an actual version of that report. I was looking at the sample data. So for example, if we run that for residential, I get all the options that I would for basically the quick search template. I think there is also an option for, nope. There is an option for time span. This is one of the more unique reports. Most of the reports, if they give you data from a month, they're going to talk about the whole month, if that makes sense. This report can actually be customized to run on a specific day of the month, right? So if you wanted to know how it was doing on the 1st of the month, or the 15th of the month, or the 30th of the month, this is really the only report that can give that breakdown to you based on the day. Make sense? I mean, that's pretty far into the weeds, but it is a really interesting report for that reason. Let's see. Some of the reports will have an option like association, where you can run it for just Emerald Coast or just Navarre if you're interested in it. I don't recommend it, but you can. But it is there. That's what this option for association is telling you. In this case, you can run it based on listing side or selling side, and you can run it on basically the whole gamut of everything else in the system. Let's just run it real quick. So it's running for, I do not want, yeah, okay. So it's going to run from December 1st of 2023 up through December 31st of 2025 for residential for the entire MLS. Oh, I should have narrowed it down. Oh, nope, that one worked pretty well. Okay, and so we can see it's running, here's December of 2023, here's January of 2024, 2025, it runs all the way up to 2025. So if you wanted to compare 3 years, this is a report that can do that. But it doesn't show it side by side like the comparison report did. So you'd kind of have to take it out and, like I said, take it someplace else. This one also doesn't have a export feature, but again, it works really well if you just copy and paste it into Excel. Let's see, it does have the total information down at the bottom as well, which can be really helpful if you're just pulling it for an entire year. If you're pulling it for 3 years like I did, it's kind of gibberish, but it's there. All right, the last option is the roster report under stats. It's not super great. It's designed to give you the information for the people in your office, basically their contact information. I feel like you guys have something better. That said, if you needed some contact information for somebody else, you can get that out of the system. The roster can do it. I don't recommend the roster though. If you're looking for a person, there's an option for the office member search, which is going to get you a specific office or a specific person automatically, as opposed to the roster, which is just going to do an info dump on you. All right. All right. Now I'm going to show you one of my newer favorite third-party programs that we've got integrated, and it's called Market Stats. When I click on the Market Stats option, it's under Products down here at the bottom. It brings up, and it looks like this. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. This is a showing time product, which means it is a Zillow sort of product, right? But what it does differently than the statistic reports that we've looked at is it is live. So as I make changes, it is automatically going to update that graph that we see at the bottom, and that can do some really cool stuff. One of the biggest drawbacks that I feel for the flex reports is that in order to change the flex report, I have to back up sometimes 2 or 3 pages and then start over, only to get something out that takes a little bit more time to dump out, and then I have to figure out what it looks like versus what I had a second ago, right? This report, in order to change it, all I have to do is click on it. So for example, I've got options at the top for price range. I can create customs. I've got property types. I can create options from that. I've got construction types and square footage, bedrooms and bathrooms. Let's say I'm only interested in the detached single family or single family market. That's it. I clicked it, it changed the graph. It's fantastic. It's very fast. It's based on the data that's in the MLS. We gave them a feed so they could create this. Right now, I'm looking at the entire MLS. If I wanted to, I can add an area up here across the top. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do Santa Rosa Beach. I can choose Santa Rosa County or Santa Rosa Beach. This is not a flex report. It will not show you areas. Sorry. But now I'm looking at the same information basically for Santa Rosa Beach. So I can look at single family in Santa Rosa Beach. It is combining both of these graphs, so it's showing me the entire MLS and the Santa Rosa Beach on the one report down at the bottom. I can continue to do that up to, honestly, I don't think I've ever hit the cap. It's a lot, all right? So I can add a bunch of areas and compare them using this system. Let's go back to the entire MLS though. Excuse me. Are there any questions about the options across the top? Unfortunately, there are not a lot of additional options other than the ones that we see here. I have yet to find a way to add a new feature. So if I wanted to talk about just waterfront, for example, the system is not smart enough to do that. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the bottom. So right now we're running it for, I'm gonna run it for all property types, all price ranges, all construction, all sizes, all bedrooms, and all bathroom options. I'm gonna minimize the top because I know we're all looking at a TV screen and sometimes that can be difficult to do. Across the very bottom, this is where I can choose what I'm looking at. So right now, I'm looking at sale price by median. Does everybody understand the difference between median and average? Okay, if anybody cares enough, I'll explain it. Otherwise, we'll just assume you can look it up later. If you don't, I can just click on a different box to see a different information. So for example, here are new listings. Here are homes for sale. Here's pending sales. Here's days on market. Here's months of supply, right? And so this is a really, excuse me, good tool for sitting down with your client and doing it in real time to say this is what the things look like. It also has a ton of data. The MLS has a ton of data. And you can see some really interesting things if you poke around a little bit. So for example, up here in the top right, we can choose to look at different graphs. So I'm looking at a line graph. I could choose a bar graph. But next to that, I have how far back do I want to go? Right now I'm going 1 year back, but I can go 3 years back. And that kind of looks like a pattern. If I go 5 years back, that's definitely a pattern. If I go 10 years back, yep. And so what we're looking at is new listings. And so what we see is that the fewest number of listings are added to the MLS in December. And the highest number of listings are added to the MLS typically in March. And you could prove that by just going, oh, that one's December, that one's December, that one's December, 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 right? And the highest are, there's April, there's March, there's March, there's March, there's March, there's March. And the system can go back as far as information in our MLS. So it's going back all the way to 2003, right? And it tracks it. And you can see it's a pattern, right? And so I think this is super interesting because it's super easy to do, it's super fast to pull, and it gives you an idea of what's going on in a particular area. And sometimes I will find stuff that is just a really weird pattern. And that was one of the ones that I found recently that I really thought was interesting. This is the days on market. It follows a kind of similar pattern, but it's not quite as obvious as the new listing, where it's literally every December we have the least number of listings added, and every March we have the most, right? But it's still there. You can see there are highs and lows. We work in a cyclical market, and the system will show that if you give it enough data. So June or July, the days on market goes down, right? That's when we sell more properties, right? Months of supply, not really a thing, right? This tells you where the market was on a particular time frame, right? But captured as a snapshot, it tells you nothing. Captured as showing this, you can clearly see the market was good here and was awful here, right? We want a lower months of supply. It was surprisingly good in 2021 and 2022. It went up and got kind of bad there for a while, but now it's headed back down, right? So if somebody says, how's the market doing? Here's the market over a 20-year period. I can change the way that the system captures that data, excuse me, and sometimes that smooths the graph out a little bit. So for example, you can see the difference between the monthly and the 3-month for the months of supply. It's just kind of smoothing that out. Just kind of smoothing that line, making that line a little straighter. And so the first one was all kind of bumpy, right? Because it was checking it literally every month, more data points. Now we're looking at every 12 months, and it looks more like a graceful curve, right? Like I said, this is my new favorite tool for instantaneous data recognition. And it's my new favorite tool for fun things you didn't know about the market. Because like I said, the new listing thing is kind of cool, right? Especially to know, oh, there's going to be more listings in March than any other time, because that happens every year. I can show you 20 years worth of data. It does that. 22 years technically, but and you can check it every month. But if we look at it over a 12-month period, that's not going to show. Make sense? So the data's all there, but in order to see it, sometimes you have to look at it a little bit differently. All right? Are there any questions? I'm about an hour. Are there any questions about this one or any of the other stuff that we've done today? Stats you wish you'd seen, or are you all bored to tears?
How far can you go back on production? Like where you started out, you were doing the production for agents. How far can you go back?
So production is you, and I don't know that there's an option to go very far back. Now, some of the reports can be run specifically for you. This one only lets me go back 3 years. But for example, the market summary can be run over a time frame, but can only be run back to, oh no, this one, oh, I don't think it's going to let me. Yeah, this one says the 80s, but I don't believe it. Oh, it's got it. So we've got data that goes all the way back to the 80s, but no data that meets that specific criteria. Because, for example, we probably didn't have Area 18, or at least it wasn't the same Area 18 that we have now.
And is there a production report for agents or teams that shows each property and what side you sold, whether you're a listing agent or selling agent?
You can run the production report for a team by being in the team. So if you're super used as the team and you go to My Production, it's going to show you for the team.
And it'll show you each property.
So I don't think there's one that will show you every property. The closest that you could get with that would be everything is designed to give you a number of sales, not each sale. You could get something similar by doing a quick search for the listing agent and then going to the detail report, or excuse me, the list view, and changing the view to just specific information you wanted. Does that make sense?
Yes, so it would only be for the list side, not the sales side.
But you could do it for the sales side.
You just have to
Yeah,
change that.
yeah. So you can do a quick. So when you do a quick search, and I apologize, y'all, but let me show her what I'm talking about. If you do what was I doing in fractional ownership? If I do let's go down to this one, and I'm going to have to add it. But if I add a field for listing selling member.
Okay.
And that one may not be it. They gave me listing board. I want member. There we go. So listing selling association, listing selling member, listing selling company, listing selling office. As long as they're active, that's a big caveat. If they're not active in the system anymore, they're not visible in lists. But if I were to do a listing selling member, I can put in someone's name or ID. So I'll use Kathy Alley, for example, past president, future president. And then from the list here on the right, I can choose to look at where she was just the listing member, where she was the co-listing member, where she was the selling or the co-listing member. And then I can see only the properties where she had both sides of the transaction or just one side of the transaction.
Very good.
Yeah. And then from here, so if we say list member, I can go to the list view tab, if you will, across the top. And then these columns that display, I can modify these by clicking on the view and choosing different columns to display. So if I wanted to do price and square footage, I can do that. If I wanted to do, there are a couple of calculatable fields as well. So for example, if I wanted to do list price to square foot, I can do that. So if I wanted to pull out that information, I can. Where you get into trouble is if you're trying to create a view that you're trying to use across different types. So if you have for sale, residential, for example, versus a commercial for sale, they don't use the same fields. And so hovering over it will tell you, oh, well, it doesn't use that. That's not used in commercial for sale. That field's not available. Neither is it available in auctions or boat slips. It's in rentals, but it's the rental price per square foot. Covered? Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah? Yes, sir.
So, going back to the absorption rate, I think it was July that they said it was around 16 months. I remember looking at it back then and thinking, man, we've got a lot of inventory out there.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like we've been in a market where we've sold 5.5 months since July, right? Like it doesn't feel like it's been that hot of a market. You would think that would feel like a hot market, right, Chris? Or what can you explain that a little bit better?
I can. So there's another way they come off the market, though,
Yeah.
which is expired, right? So yes, it's not the same number, but the two things that affect absorption are obviously the rate of sales, but the inventory is another one. And so as inventory changes, that ratio, which is just a flat division, basically, tells us, how long, makes that big jump. So if you wanted to, you could, okay, so we're looking at the absorption rate here, right? And so, yeah, in May, June, it was its highest peak, according to this report. It's close enough for government work to do months of inventory as well, but it is a little different. Again, I don't want to get into that because it's boring. But a better one, if you wanted to look at the absorption rate, would probably be the market stats option and then the months of inventory. But yes, if we change this, so let's say just for the sake of completeness, let's go check market stats. I didn't have to open it again, Chris. You silly Billy. All right, but okay, so we're gonna leave all of that. We're gonna do months of supply, right? And if I change this to 1 year, looks a little different, right? Because I'm not looking at just residential, but I can change that. There you go. And you always got to be careful you're comparing apples to apples too, right? But, okay, so this is our peaks. We had a peak in 2024, and then the peak was in May for single family for the entire MLS. But like I said, if we expand this, you can see that it kind of humps, right? If we look at it on a monthly basis, it kind of has, we have a cyclical. Going up is bad, going back down is good, but if we compare that line to homes for sale, there we go, which is the equivalent of inventory, they track.
So is it because of the new listings that you have coming on in March or April? Does that probably have a lot to do with it? That you have so much coming on just at that time frame, and it's always going to peak?
Yeah, it certainly can. And like I said, if you look at it versus the new listings, you can see that there's a distinctive peak right around March, right? But sometimes it gets weird. Like 2023 here was weird. It was a weird, high season. The lows were the same, but the highs were weird. And so you got to take into consideration, if this looks weird in a particular area, it could be because of that. It could just be a product of homes for sale. In this case, you can still say down is better, right? So headed down is a better market than headed up. But yeah, we can also look at, there's almost a nearly one-to-one relation between months of supply and homes for sale.
Yeah.
Right?
Last question I had too was, it doesn't look like you can break this down for bigger communities. Is that right for most of this, like a watercolor? Like if you wanted to get like super specific with just watercolor on a lot of these reports, can you get just watercolors at more just areas?
This one had Atlas on it.
This one has water sound,
Okay.
but I think it also has zips. So what I would do if you can't, so in Flex, you get the subdivision option. So
Right.
you can do it by watercolor potentially. But even then, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. You're better off doing a map search in Flex, which it will let you do on some of them. In this one, you probably would be limited to something like a zip code search, which is going to give you close, but not everything.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But it's definitely more comparable than just running it for all of Santa Rosa Beach.
Right. Great.
But yeah, Flex has a lot of interoperability between, breaking it down. You can break it all the way down to the specific subdivision. But then that becomes problematic because, especially if the subdivision isn't large, even watercolor, as big as it is not a great statistical indicator of anything because it's not as many as the entire MLS. Make sense? So you can infer things, but a large single sale in watercolor can skew the entire thing in a way that a large single sale won't skew the entire MLS as badly.
What I was going for is more like market specific. So if you were going to, send something out to everybody in watercolor, this is your market report for watercolor.
Sure.
That was where I was kind of going with it.
Yeah, and like I said, the options in Flex are more varied than they are for, so I can find
So
watercolor.
you can get it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Right? But if I pull it, it may not show everything that I expect it to. Did it not pull? Oh, I didn't click on it. And so search. Like I said, the options in Flex are very robust. I can get very granular. I can get all the way down to a specific whatever. But they're not always as telling. So for example, here, the sold price, sharp curves.
Because, yeah,
Exactly.
you had one or
You
two
had
big
one
sales.
really big sale that skewed the median sale price. Actually, you probably had two that skewed the median sale price significantly. And over the larger data set, you don't see these kinds of sharp rises and declines. And so it's harder to look at something like watercolor, even in Flex, because when you can do it,
You can have
and infer things, because
outliers that really
can
change it.
really throw it off. And like
Gotcha.
I said, it's similar to what we saw, right? But something in August changed it. And,
Okay.
and even here, we can see that it's actually up a little bit, right? So you just got to be more careful.
Okay.
Is really
Yeah.
the takeaway from that one.
Makes sense.
What else?
Anybody else?
Anything else you want to learn? Like I said, I think I covered statistics. Yes, Lana.
So when you pulled up watercolor, there's watercolor all in caps and watercolor in lowercase. What's the difference between those?
Subdivision name and how it was input. Excuse me. So for example, if I do custom, new location, watercolor, there are 3 different versions that watercolor has been entered in the past. It's been all lowercase. It's been, just the W is capitalized, the W and the C is capitalized, all capitalized, and then we get into the watercolor crossing or, Pine Ridge at watercolor. And sometimes you have to remember to go down to the very bottom and click on the show all. But you can see that it'll tell you what the field name is. So these are all subdivision options that have watercolor in them. And sometimes, if I did Santa Rosa, for example, I got an option for city because there's a Santa Rosa beach, right? There's a Santa Rosa County, and then there were a ton of Santa Rosa subdivisions as well. And so, yes, anything that the system has chosen or someone has entered in the past will come up as part of that search.
Okay, so the ones with the lowercase and the, all the uppercase, just like watercolor itself,
Yep.
those 4, how would the data differ? I mean, would there be something in?
It's
that?
possible, yes.
Okay.
It is possible that you may get different data sets for those 4 options,
Okay.
which is why an option like zip code will work better sometimes, because it's a lot more difficult to get a different zip code for an area than it is a subdivision name, right? Because even though it's in watercolor, they don't always put watercolor in the same way. And there's search parameters that you can use to find properties in an area. But if I was going to do this on any other report, I would probably try to choose a map option as opposed to picking the subdivision name from the laundry list of nonsense that people have put in the past.
Okay,
Right.
so the ones with all caps, is that predetermined or pre-filled within MLS when we put in
Nope.
listings? No?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a way you can just marry all those and we can get over that?
Nope, unfortunately. The closest you could get to that would be a zip code search.
No, I meant like an ECAR go in there and just go ahead and make them all one.
So we have looked at that. And what you're describing is what we looked at a while back for a master subdivision list.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we have tens of thousands of data points that would have to be smashed together. And it got really hard. It got really difficult to figure out a master subdivision for a particular area versus, this versus that.
I understand.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it won't happen eventually. I'm just saying that even if I took everybody I have off of that and just put them on identifying the main areas, it would still probably take us about a year to get it done. And that's just throwing out the random gibberish that some people type sometimes.
Yes. imagine.
What else? Anything else? Any other reports or anything else in the MLS or the association? I've done everything. I've worked in every department. Your best opportunity.
So this is probably, everybody probably knows this answer except me,
all
because
right.
I'm pretty new. On a quick search, if I wanted to do, like, say I'm looking for a $2 to $4 million deal in 3 different neighborhoods, can you do a quick search? And because I wasn't able to, I don't know how to do it where I can choose this neighborhood, and this neighborhood all in one report.
Easy peasy. I'm going to make up some numbers here just so we have something to look at and so I don't have to do it for all of them. But the easiest way to do that, and like I said, the option that I would choose most of the time is the map option. So you can do it by area. So for example, if I wanted to talk about Fort Walton and Escambia, I can hold down the control key and select multiples from the area. I could do the same thing with sub area, but even that is still a little bit, it could be better. The easiest, best, most glorious way to do this is if I come over here, and I'm just hiding that so that it's not in my way, but let's say I want to talk about Destin versus Miramar Beach. Over here on the right, I've got 3 choices in blue that are map options. If I can get what I need with a rectangle, I can literally just drag a box out and say, okay, that's my first area. And then I can zoom out, move over, and go, okay, here's my second area. I gotta choose it. And then if I wanted to, I can get so far in that I can find the specifics for a particular property. So for example, if I wanted to come down here and do seaside, right? Yeah. Or specific neighborhoods, I can do that. And the third option over here allows me to draw a polygon. And so what I can do with that is I can literally say, I just want from here to here, and every time I click, I get a new point. Double click to close, and then I can add another subdivision, right? Just by doing the same thing, the same map. And like I said, it's scales, right? So over here on the left, I can get rid of the rectangles if I wanted to. And then it scales, so I can go all the way into individual lots even and show them that way. But like I said, if I want to talk about, this neighborhood, those 2 neighborhoods, and then maybe add a third one down here kind of thing, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Let's say you want to expand on the polygon after you've drawn it out. How do you do that? Because
You want to expand on the polygon. So you drew it and you want to change it a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go in and I'll grab the polygon that I just created. So I want to cut out a specific section. What I can do is over here, once I've selected or created the polygons, and this is any polygon that you create, over here on the left, I can highlight it. So I'm just hovering over it. You can see that it's highlighted in yellow. That's the system trying to help me figure out which polygon I'm looking at because they have the same name. But once I click on the name polygon over here, I can edit the name, right? I can also edit the shape. Right? So once I'm in here, I can give it a new name, but I can choose edit shape. And when I do that, it gives me more options. So I want to move this line in. So I just grab the dot, the relevant dots, and then I can leave edit shape down here in the bottom right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And like I said, if I wanted, I can split a street. The overlays that we have for the MLS overlays, the MLS areas and sub areas, we created using that polygon tool. And it splits rivers, it creeks, and crazy stuff, up to 10,000 data points per map. And I know that because we exceeded that on a few of them, and we had to get them to custom build it for us to allow more.
Thank you.
What else? Anything at all? All right. That's what I got.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hope you learned something.